Picture this. It's a perfectly ordinary morning. You open your eyes, and before your feet even touch the ground, your hand reaches for your phone. No water, no deep breath, no moment of stillness. Just a quick scroll. Or at least that's what you tell yourself. 10 minutes pass in the blink of an eye. 20 minutes later, you're still there, scrolling through endless short clips, or worse, wandering into corners of the internet you'd rather not admit. By the time you finally look up, nearly an hour has disappeared. You get up in a rush, but inside there's a lingering heaviness, a mix of emptiness, guilt, and shame. Does this sound familiar? You know this pattern adds nothing to your life. You know it steals your energy, your focus, your time. And yet, you repeat it again and again, like a loop you can't break. Here's the sobering truth. You're not alone. Over 90% of men admit to consuming pornography regularly. Millions more spend hours gaming, binge watching, or chasing instant hits of pleasure from endless notifications. We are living in an age where your attention is not just distracted, it's being bought and sold. Every weakness of your mind is carefully studied and exploited by an industry that thrives on your inability to look away. And so the question becomes, are you the master of yourself? Or have you quietly become a slave, shackled not by chains, but by dopamine loops and digital temptations? But what if there was a way out? What if there was a philosophy powerful enough to help you break this cycle, reclaim your inner freedom, and find a deeper strength than the shallow highs of instant gratification? In this episode, we're going to explore one of the most urgent issues facing men today: digital addiction, from pornography to binge content to the endless scroll. And we're going to approach it through the timeless lens of Stoic philosophy. Now, let me be clear, Stoicism won't hand you a magic button to switch off your desires overnight. That's not how change works. But what it does offer is far greater. It offers tools. Tools that have helped men for thousands of years overcome temptation, endure hardship, and live with purpose. Tools that can turn the restless chaos of your mind into calm, controlled power. Today, we'll turn those tools into something practical. 5 simple but profound Stoic questions. Questions you can ask yourself the next time temptation comes knocking. Questions that will force you to see clearly, to take responsibility, and to remember who you truly want to be. This won't be shallow life hacks or cheap motivational lines. These are truths, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes hard to swallow. But if you have the courage to face them, they will change not only how you fight digital addiction, but how you live. And here's my promise, if you stay with me to the end. The 5th question, drawn directly from the private writings of Marcus Aurelius, has the power to completely reframe how you spend every single day of your life. So, let me ask you one more time, are you ready? We live in an era of abundance, not of food, not of wealth, but of stimulation. At any moment, with a single tap, you can access more entertainment, more images, more distractions than entire generations before us could have seen in a lifetime. What once required effort, patience, or courage is now instantly available in the palm of your hand. And while that might sound like progress, it comes with a hidden cost: the erosion of your attention, your discipline, and your ability to live meaningfully. Let's face the numbers. Studies show that more than 91% of men between the ages of 18 and 73 view pornography at least once a month. That's nearly everyone. And while some argue it's harmless, the reality is darker. Excessive consumption has been linked to reduced interest in real intimacy, compulsive behaviors similar to substance addictions, and a lingering cloud of guilt and shame. For some men, it's not just a bad habit, it's a silent prison. Gaming tells a similar story. The World Health Organization officially recognizes gaming disorder as a condition, and estimates suggest nearly 3% of the global population is affected. That might sound small, but when applied to billions of people, it represents tens of millions who are stuck in cycles of escape, unable to put down the controller or log off. Many of them know exactly what they're avoiding: responsibilities, relationships, and the uncomfortable truth of their own lives. Then there's binge watching and short-form content. Platforms are engineered to keep you hooked, serving you an endless chain of videos optimized to exploit your brain's craving for novelty. Entire evenings vanish in a haze of just one more episode or just 5 more minutes of scrolling. Research shows these habits are strongly correlated with depression, anxiety, poor sleep, and chronic procrastination. You tell yourself it's harmless entertainment, but deep down, you know it's eating away at your time, your health, and your potential. And here's the part no one wants to admit. The impact of these habits isn't just individual, it's social. The more time men spend chained to screens, the less they invest in their families, their friendships, and their communities. The less they pursue meaningful goals, the weaker society becomes. A generation that could be building, leading, and protecting ends up numbed by dopamine, chasing digital shadows instead of real-world victories. Let me ask you directly, have you ever put off an important task, a work deadline, a promise to your child, or a personal goal, because you got lost in digital indulgence? Have you ever felt that creeping sense of self-betrayal when you realize hours are gone and you've gained nothing? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. This is the pain of the modern age. But why is it so powerful? Why do smart, capable, even disciplined men fall into this trap? The answer lies in the nature of the brain itself. These digital temptations hijack your reward system. They deliver instant gratification, quick hits of dopamine that make you feel good now, at the cost of your long-term well-being. It's the same principle behind gambling machines or addictive substances, except this time, it's legal, cheap, and always within reach. And this is where the real tragedy lies. Because men don't just lose time, they lose themselves. They begin to live on autopilot, reacting instead of choosing, consuming instead of creating. Over time, they forget what freedom even feels like. The Stoics warned about this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily not to be a beast driven by pleasure, but to live with reason and virtue. Seneca wrote about the shortness of life, how much of it we waste on distractions and desires that leave us emptier than before. They lived in a world filled with its own temptations, gladiatorial games, feasts, indulgence, and their words ring just as true now as they did then. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Digital addiction is not just about porn, games, or videos. It's about surrender. It's about letting external forces dictate your life while you tell yourself you're in control. And the longer you accept it, the more you drift away from the man you could be. But here's the hopeful truth. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to stay stuck in that loop. You can reclaim control. You can learn to face temptation without bowing to it. And you can build a life where you choose your actions, not the algorithm, not the craving, not the weakness of the moment. That is where Stoicism enters the picture. Not as a dusty philosophy for scholars, but as a living, breathing guide for men in the modern world. It gives us the mental armor to withstand the endless assault of distractions. It reminds us that freedom comes not from indulging every impulse, but from mastering them. And it shows us that even in a world addicted to the immediate, we can live for the eternal. If digital addiction is the disease of our time, then Stoicism is one of the oldest medicines we can turn to. It may sound strange at first. How can a philosophy born in ancient Greece and refined in imperial Rome possibly have anything to say about smartphones, streaming platforms, or pornography? But the truth is, the human struggle has never really changed. The tools may be different, but the temptations remain the same. 2,000 years ago, men weren't glued to glowing screens, but they were still drowning in distractions, gladiatorial games that stretched for days, lavish feasts that encouraged overindulgence, and public spectacles designed to thrill the senses while numbing the mind. The Stoics saw how easily people could be swept away by pleasure, noise, and empty diversions. And they asked the same question you must ask today. What kind of man do you become if you live this way? Stoicism rests on four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Together, they form a code for a living with strength and clarity. In the face of digital temptation, two of these stand out. Wisdom teaches you to see reality as it is, not as your cravings want it to be. Temperance reminds you that freedom isn't the ability to indulge in everything, but the discipline to say no when indulgence leads to weakness. Epictetus, once a slave, understood the true meaning of freedom. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Those words echo louder than ever in the age of digital addiction. Because what good is external freedom, the ability to go anywhere, do anything, if internally you are shackled by impulses you cannot control? Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled the most powerful empire of his time, wrote privately to himself about resisting the pull of pleasure. He reminded himself not to live like a beast driven by appetite, but to rise above fleeting cravings and pursue the higher good. If the most powerful man on earth needed daily reminders not to become a slave to desire, then surely we too need them, especially in an age where temptation is not occasional but constant. Stoicism doesn't offer escape. It offers mastery. It doesn't ask you to run away from desire, but to confront it, to examine it, and to choose what aligns with your higher purpose. Where modern culture whispers, "Just one more click won't hurt," Stoicism demands, will this action make you stronger or weaker? Will it make you freer or more enslaved? And this is why Stoicism matters now. Because we don't just need advice. We need principles. We don't just need motivation. We need discipline. The Stoics give us both. A philosophy that respects our struggles while also holding us accountable to something greater. In the next section, we'll explore 5 practical Stoic questions, tools you can carry with you into the battlefield of everyday life. These aren't abstract ideas for philosophers in ivory towers. They're living, breathing practices you can use the next time temptation flashes across your screen. And if you take them seriously, they may just change the trajectory of your life. The first question cuts straight to the core of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus begins his Enchiridion with the line, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." This is not just a clever observation, it's the foundation of freedom. Because the moment you can separate what belongs to you and what doesn't, you stop wasting energy fighting battles you cannot win. When it comes to digital addiction, this question becomes a shield against self-deception. Ask yourself, is the notification that just popped up within my control? Is the urge to open that website within my control? The honest answer is no. The triggers, the algorithms, the sudden cravings are not fully yours to command. But what is within your control is your response. Do you act on the urge blindly? Or do you pause and choose differently? Think of it like a storm. You cannot stop the thunder clouds from forming, but you can decide whether to walk outside without shelter. Likewise, you cannot stop an urge from rising, but you can decide whether to feed it or let it pass. Here's a modern example. Imagine you're working late at night, and the familiar thought appears. Just 5 minutes of scrolling won't hurt. That thought is not your fault. It's the product of years of conditioning. Dopamine loops engineered by some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley. But what happens next is your responsibility. Do you surrender, or do you choose a higher path? This is where Stoicism gives you power. Instead of saying, "I can't help it," you remind yourself, "This moment is mine to govern." You reframe the struggle not as a fight against the algorithm, but as a test of your own discipline. And suddenly, the temptation isn't just about porn, or videos, or games. It's about whether you will remain a master of yourself. Ask yourself, when you give in to these impulses, who benefits? Not you. The companies that design these platforms profit from your weakness. The world gains nothing. Only you pay the price. And yet, every time you resist, every time you reclaim control, you strengthen a muscle far more valuable than any momentary pleasure. The muscle of freedom. Epictetus would tell his students to pause whenever an impression, a powerful urge, presented itself. He advised them to ask, "Is this something in my power, or outside of it?" That pause is everything. It breaks the automatic cycle. It gives you room to breathe. And in that breath, you have a chance to choose. Let me ask you, how many times have you felt the regret after giving in? How many times have you wished you could go back and stop yourself before you clicked, before you scrolled, before you lost another hour? This question, is this within my control, is the way to stop that regret before it begins. Because the truth is, you cannot control the existence of temptation. You cannot stop porn from existing, or videos from auto-playing, or games from being released. But you can always control your choice in this moment. That's all Stoicism ever asks of you, not perfection, not invincibility, just ownership of the one thing that truly belongs to you, your mind. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Like training in the gym, each repetition makes you stronger. Each moment of resistance builds confidence. Soon, the question becomes a reflex. Is this mine to control? And when the answer is yes, you rise to meet it. This is the first step out of digital slavery. To reclaim your life, you must first reclaim the simple but profound truth that your choices, and only your choices, are within your control. The Stoics understood that every action is more than an isolated event. It is a brick laid in the construction of your character. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What you repeatedly do, think, and indulge in does not remain separate from who you are. It becomes you. When you sit in front of a screen at midnight, deciding whether to give in to the urge to watch pornography or waste another hour scrolling, you are not just choosing a momentary pleasure. You are casting a vote for the kind of man you will be tomorrow. And that question, what kind of man am I becoming, is one of the most sobering questions you can ask, because it forces you to confront the gap between your intentions and your reality. Let's take an example. Imagine two men. The first tells himself, "It's no big deal. Just one more video. Just one more night." He says this every day for a year. The second man faces the same temptation, but asks himself, "If I do this, who will I be tomorrow? Will I be stronger? Or will I be weaker?" The first man may feel the same as the second in the moment, but after a year, their lives will look very different. One will have built a pattern of avoidance, distraction, and weakness. The other will have built resilience, purpose, and strength. The Stoics were relentless about this principle. They didn't see virtue as a lofty ideal, but as something tested in the smallest daily choices. Seneca warned, "We become brave by doing brave acts, temperate by doing temperate acts." In other words, your identity is forged in the micro-decisions no one else sees. So ask yourself, when you give in to digital addiction, who are you becoming? Are you becoming a man who can lead his family, master his work, and pursue excellence? Or are you becoming the man who hides, who numbs, who trades away hours of his finite life from moments of fleeting pleasure? Identity is destiny. Every repetition of an action makes it easier to do again. Porn isn't just porn. It's shaping your brain, shaping your self-respect, shaping the way you see women, intimacy, and even yourself. The same goes for endless gaming, binge watching, or scrolling. These are not neutral pastimes. They are chisels sculpting the man you are presenting to the world. But here's the empowering side. You can rewrite the pattern. Every choice is a chance to build a different man. When you choose to resist, even once, you are also shaping identity. You are becoming the man who can say no, the man who can pause, the man who can lead himself instead of being led by urges. Think of a father who, instead of disappearing into digital distraction after work, chooses to spend one meaningful hour reading to his child. That single choice, repeated, does more than entertain his child. It defines him as a present father, a man who values connection over escape. Or picture a professional who, instead of spending a late night scrolling, uses that hour to work on a skill. That choice doesn't just change his resume, it changes who he sees in the mirror. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself constantly. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? But we can push it further in our age. If I do this, what kind of man am I becoming? That question turns indulgence into identity. And suddenly, every action matters. Let me ask you directly. If someone filmed your last week and showed it back to you, would you be proud of the man you see? Or would you feel shame at how much of your time, energy, and dignity was surrendered to digital impulses? The good news is, the story isn't finished. Your next action is a new brushstroke on the canvas of your character. And if you begin asking this Stoic question every time temptation appears, you will start living less like a man reacting to urges and more like a man deliberately crafting who he is becoming. That is power. That is freedom. That is the path of the Stoic. The third Stoic question forces us to face the uncomfortable truth about indulgence. Every pleasure carries a cost. Seneca put it bluntly, no pleasure is a good if it is pursued at the expense of reason. And again, every pleasure is a debtor. Sooner or later, you will have to pay the price in the heat of the moment. The cost is invisible. The video looks harmless. The game feels like just one more round. The feed promises endless novelty. But Stoicism challenges you to pause, look past the immediate glow, and ask, what is the bill that comes due after this moment? Think about it in terms of your body. That midnight binge of junk food tastes good now, but the long-term consequence is weight gain, sluggishness, maybe even illness. We accept that when it comes to food, but we forget that the mind works the same way. Every indulgence in digital addiction leaves a residue. It drains your focus, dulls your motivation, reshapes your brain's reward system. Over time, the cost isn't just minutes lost. It's the slow erosion of your potential. Consider pornography. In the moment, it promises release and stimulation. But long-term, for many men, it leads to diminished interest in real intimacy, distorted views of relationships, even dysfunction. Some report feeling numb toward partners, or unable to perform without artificial stimuli. That's not free pleasure. That's a bargain with hidden chains. Or look at endless scrolling. It feels like relaxation, a harmless way to take a break. But the long-term consequence is an attention span fractured into pieces. You find it harder to read books, to focus deeply at work, to hold conversations without glancing at your phone. The very muscle of your mind, concentration, atrophies. You didn't just waste time. You weakened yourself. Gaming can be similar. A night lost to just one more match feels thrilling in the moment. But look ahead. How many projects are left unfinished? How many opportunities slipped away? How many relationships grew distant because your time and energy were spent in digital victories that vanish when the screen goes dark? The Stoics practiced a discipline called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before acting, they imagined the possible consequences, not to paralyze themselves, but to prepare and choose wisely. You can apply this directly to your digital temptations. Before clicking, ask, how will I feel tomorrow morning if I do this? What will this habit look like after a year? After 10 years? Let's make this real. Picture yourself a decade from now. Which version of you will exist? The man who spent thousands of hours chasing instant pleasure, or the man who invested that same time into health, skills, relationships, and legacy? Both futures are possible, but the bridge to one or the other is built in these small, seemingly insignificant choices. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. Death hangs over you while you live, while it is in your power. Be good." He wasn't warning against digital addiction, but he was warning against wasting life. And what is digital addiction, if not the most modern way to squander what is precious? So the next time you're tempted, ask yourself, what is the long-term consequence of this short-term pleasure? Because once you see the cost clearly, the pleasure loses its disguise. It is no longer harmless entertainment. It is a thief, and the only way it can rob you is if you keep handing over your time without thinking. Let me ask you, when was the last time you truly considered the price of your indulgence? And are you willing to keep paying it in lost years, lost energy, lost strength, just for a few fleeting seconds of dopamine? The Stoics would say no, and if you begin to see as they saw, you will too. Freedom is a word we prize above almost all of us. We want the freedom to choose, the freedom to live as we please, the freedom to shape our own destiny. And yet, how often do we confuse freedom with indulgence? How often do we assume that saying yes to every craving means we're free, when in reality, it means we are bound? Epictetus, who knew both slavery and freedom in the most literal sense, wrote, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it." In other words, you don't prove you are free by giving in to every impulse. You prove it by showing you can resist. Digital temptations present themselves as tools of freedom. Watch whatever you want, whenever you want. Play endlessly, scroll without limits. On the surface, that sounds like liberty, but ask yourself honestly, when you cannot go without, are you free? When you feel restless without the next video, when you need the constant drip of stimulation just to feel normal, who's in charge then? Consider the man who tells himself, "I'm free. I can watch porn whenever I want." But soon, he finds he cannot stop. He no longer chooses, he obeys. Or the man who says, "I play games because I enjoy them." Yet after hours upon hours, he realizes he isn't choosing to play anymore. He's compelled, driven by habit, unable to stop even when he wants to. That is not freedom. That is captivity in disguise. The Stoics were ruthless in exposing this illusion. They believed that true freedom is inner freedom, the capacity to govern your own mind and actions regardless of external circumstances. A man chained by his desires is no freer than a man chained by iron. Both are prisoners. Only the material differs. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You may leave this life at any moment. Have this possibility in your mind in all that you do, say and think." Why? Because remembering the brevity of life cuts through the illusion that wasting hours on empty pleasures is freedom. When time is finite, every indulgence must be measured against what it costs you in freedom. Your ability to choose a better use of your life. Ask yourself, when you open that app, are you the master or the servant? Does it serve your goals, your values, your higher purpose? Or do you serve its endless algorithm, trapped in a cycle of craving and release? Think of freedom in another way. Imagine two men. The first cannot go a day without checking his feeds. His so-called freedom to use them whenever he likes has become an invisible cage. The second man, however, can pick up his phone or put it down at will. He enjoys what is useful but refuses to be owned by it. Which man is truly free? Stoicism reminds us that liberty is not about saying yes to every pleasure. It's about having the strength to say no, and meaning it. It's about being able to walk away, confident that your worth and your joy are not tied to external stimulation. So, the next time you feel the pull of digital indulgence, ask yourself, does this make me free? Or does this chain me further? The answer may sting, but it will also set you on a path toward genuine freedom, the kind that cannot be taken by algorithms, by cravings, or even by fate itself, because at the end of the day, freedom is not measured by how much you consume. It's measured by how little consumes you. Of all the Stoic practices, perhaps none is more sobering or more liberating than remembering death. The Stoics called it memento mori. Remember that you must die. Far from being morbid, this reflection is a wake-up call. It cuts through illusions, trivialities, and excuses. It asks you to see life as finite, and therefore infinitely precious. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. He wasn't trying to depress himself. He was sharpening his sense of urgency, reminding himself that every choice mattered because every day could be the last. Now, bring that thought into the context of digital addiction. Imagine for a moment that today is your final day on Earth. Would you want to spend it hunched over a glowing screen, numbed by pornography, or hypnotized by an endless scroll of meaningless clips? Would you want your last conscious hours to be consumed by pixels designed to extract your attention rather than enrich your soul? Or would you rather spend it differently, holding the hand of someone you love, walking outside beneath the sky, writing words that will outlast you, or simply sitting in silence with a clear mind and a free heart? This question exposes the absurdity of instant gratification. No one standing at the edge of life says, "I wish I had spent more time on my phone. I wish I had watched more videos. One wish I had clicked on more links." But many do say, "I wish I had been more present. I wish I had lived with more courage, more love, more intention." When you ask yourself, if this were my last day, would I choose this? You drag your choices into the light of eternity. Suddenly, the pull of digital temptation looks smaller, weaker, almost laughable. It cannot stand against the weight of mortality. Seneca warned in his essay on the shortness of life, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Every indulgence that consumes your hours is not neutral. It is theft, and the thief is not the algorithm, not the platform, not even society. The thief is your own unexamined choice." But this question does more than convict. It empowers, because it gives you a compass. When you pause before clicking, before indulging, and you ask, "Would I choose this if today were my last?" You already know the answer, and in that answer lies clarity. Think of the alternative. If you lived each day as if it could be your last, how different would your life look? How much more time would you give to people instead of screens, to creation instead of consumption, to courage instead of comfort? The Stoics weren't asking us to obsess over death. They were asking us to honor life. And what greater dishonor to life could there be than wasting it in endless distraction, blind to the reality that time is slipping away? So I ask you now, if today were your last, would you be proud of how you are spending it? If not, then why spend it that way at all? This final Stoic question isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to wake you, to jolt you back into the reality that your life is finite. Your time is sacred, and your choices are shaping not just your present, but your legacy. And if you can carry this question with you, if you can let memento mori guide your digital habits, you will find that temptation loses much of its power, because no fleeting pleasure is worth trading for the eternity of your soul.